G'day, friends and fans. Welcome to Writing Corner. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood Arcade, Power Games, and Into the Owl's Bound. And before I begin, I'd like to remind you that this channel is sponsored by you, the viewing audience. So please, if you can take a moment to like, share, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe, please do. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, check out the links after the show. Excuse me a moment while I share the stream on X, because as you may have heard me say many times, X doesn't let you share the stream until after you go. Now, here we go. Thank you. All right. Crafting complex characters. Of course, the first thing is, what is it? We have to define what is a complex character as opposed to what most people would call a flat or a two-dimensional character. Now, a flat or a two-dimensional character is one is one who undergoes no character development, whether that's as simple as giving them a backstory. So now, by backstory, I mean an actual backstory. I don't mean the he's from Kalamazoo and he was colored blue. I mean an actual history to the character. Now it goes a little bit more that, right? First and foremost, a complex character has flaws, has a backstory, has motivations. They undergo conflict. This conflict leads to either further character development or changes to their motivations. They have both strengths and weaknesses to their character. They have values, beliefs, which can change. They can have complexities, such as contradictions to their motivations and beliefs. It's important because people are complex. People are conflicted. People have beliefs, yet they struggle. A lot of people struggle with their beliefs. They're told charity is one of the biggest things, right? Giving things away, not having wealth. There are poor people in the world and you should help them. But the thing is, I've helped myself. Why can't they? That's a very good conflict. What is wealth? Why must the wealthy give it away? Why must you impose your beliefs on the wealthy? If you're charitable, why must others be charitable? This flat protagonist in many stories. It's just very hard to point to them. But these are characters seen as flawless. I think modern Star Wars has often come under attack for weak and flat characters. By weak, I mean weak by the standard is they're I guess weak's not the true proper term. The character lacks strengths and weaknesses, right? They're like if they're let's take it on an RPG level. Let's say if most characters were level 10, Rey's level 50. She walks through the desert unmolested and unchallenged. Now, as much as people think about backstories, Star Wars doesn't have a very good backstory. It was built up over time, but it's still far from what I would say a complex backstory. Luke was built up over time, and he's one of the few complex characters. Vader is a complex character. Eventually, Palpatine became a complex character thanks to the prequels. But before that, what was he? He was a paper cutout who giggled like a schoolgirl over everything. Wasn't really a. What was his motivation? Power. Okay. To what end? Why? Was he bullied? Was he? Well, it turns out to just like power. So he was a projection of Lucas's dark desires, was he? Because he doesn't seem to have a character. But everybody has a flat character, and we can't give every character a backstory and a motivation. I mean, we've seen what happens when they try that. Even in some animes, the entire story bogs down very quickly into flashbacks and now it's not confusing. It's quite simple. It's just a writing exercise. Where and when can you bring up the complexity in a character? Again, some writing exercises will call this dynamic character or multifaceted or layered. That means they have more than one defining trait, and you have to find ways to bring them up. And this doesn't mean every character needs multiple paragraphs in every scene, in a dialogue behind every action. This is what you do is you take an archetype, alter one trait, or take the magician, give him a dying family member, or take away the orphan, take the orphan, and say killed his family. We never have a dynamic character if we have just they get the 26 tarot cards, which are based on the 26 Greek gods. That's where archetypes come from, folks. It's where all our storytelling is, right? That's why so many people do not have. They only have to do it for 2 to 3 characters. Your main protagonist and your main antagonist. Generally, most characters don't need to be dynamic. But most characters should at least have some flaws. Now, perfect characters are always considered boring, even in real life. But even though nobody's truly perfect, what drives people to boredom, to tears, is all these people who stand around at parties who talk about their degrees and their jobs and their little trophies and their golf clubs and their Rotary meetings or their latest charity drives, because they're not it's boasting, right? They're not human achievements. They're it's hard, right? When you're a sportsman, right? Sportsman comes off the field and he wants to talk about sports. Well, what do you think about? Hey, what do you think about? I mean, it's like it's like why most people talk about the weather, because you bring up anything else and instantly you always get the angry guy who's always going to jump down your throat. Oh, Trump's this, Trump's that. or and that spoils everything. So minor flaws, okay? Don't make your protagonist or even your antagonist exaggerated, okay? Minor flaws, a quirk that won't affect the story. Save your major flaws for things for your character to overcome. Like, and if your antagonist has a fatal flaw, have it exposed and used by the hero. Have the guy brought down by his own hubris, that sort of thing. Conflict, internal conflict, inner battles. You know the drill. I've said enough about that. Now, I've made some notes, but again, I think I've read. I'm just trying to go back and make sure that I've covered everything. Backstory, yeah, you don't again, I want to reiterate that you don't want too much backstory. You want to bring this out over time. Clean up your story so that the backstory comes up when it would come up in a normal conversation. Same with values and beliefs. Work them into the conflict. Like, say your character is a charitable and the holier than thou pious says, "Oh, you haven't given to charity lately," and he's thinking about it. Oh, jeez, should I? Shouldn't I? And just say, I'll get back to you. But in the head, in that inner dialogue, that's a good time for an inner dialogue. Should I? Shouldn't I? Why should I? Why shouldn't I? I don't really like this guy. I know that you don't support his cause, or you think he's just another social parasite. That there are things we all believe that we don't often say. I think social media has allowed us to say them, but in real life, we don't really say them, do we? We don't tell the door knockers, "Fuck off, parasite," do we? Although some do. But a lot of charities, people look down on them, right? Whether they believe, they have this conflict. I shouldn't really harp on about charities. I was trying to think of other areas of conflict. Somebody who doesn't want to kill. There's a good character. There was this comedy, Dad's Army, and there was this character. He was the medic, and then people discovered that he was a conscientious objector in World War I, and that was considered the death penalty. They were all, you're a traitor. You were the lowest of the low. You refused to fight. Then they found out he won a medal. I forget which medal he won, but it was a big deal. And he was a medic in World War I who saved lives. He refused to carry a gun. He refused to fight, but he still volunteered. He told the recruiter he was an objector, but he would be. He asked to be a medic. He said he wouldn't fight, wouldn't carry a gun, and that is a great conflict because people around him sort of remembered their own war experience and said, "You know what? There he was treating the wounded under fire, and here I am, calling him the coward." There's a great conflict in that story. And there's an exposing of a backstory that gave conflict, that challenged and exposed people's values and beliefs without having to hammer it home in an entire 30-minute 45-minute sketch about bravery and what it means to be brave and the challenges and norms of society about enforcing your beliefs onto others. That if you truly believe in freedom, you don't force your value and beliefs on others. Whether you do it through government action, like conscript or conscription, mandatory government service, those sorts of things. Those create conflicts of value and challenge values. Contradictions, layers to your identity. Whether it's the modest man, the humble man, what happens when he becomes rich? What happens to the then we go through the story of those who get power, gain power, and and how power has corrupted them. We've seen that throughout history. We don't need any one example, but Napoleon, Victoria, trying to think, Caesar. Just look up long fall from grace, and you get a long list of world leaders who have fallen from grace over the years. But you also have some amazing people who've been vilified as politicians, but then in their private life and their personal life, they have done some amazing things. Can you think? Well, you think of Andrew Jackson and slavery, yet he was also a very charitable man who, in his later life, was an advocate for literacy, of all things. Now, I've been trying to find whether or not more examples. But Andrew Jackson has a controversial legacy. During his lifetime, he went from poverty to extreme wealth. He had a particularly harsh record as a politician. Most people don't know whether or not he should be revered or reviled. He was only the 7th president. He was strong-willed. He was a populist. He challenged the political establishment time and time again. Though he ushered in exploration and expansion. Critics say he was should be pretty much reviled because he owned slaves. He forced Native Americans to be removed from their ancestral lands. But he was also revered. He supported slavery and profited off slavery. He's really conflicted character about the values of freedom, what do you call definitely a villain in the eyes of Native Americans for the Trail of Tears. But what were his positives? A lot of people always talked about his negatives, yet he was so revered. I suppose it comes from the biographers and really paint his victories over the British Army. And I really think that those military victories carried forth a very powerful legacy, only surpassed by George Washington. And again, he served and fought in 1812. In the Senate, he did a lot for Tennessee. He ran boarding houses. He opposed presidents having absolute power, as many after the revolution wanted. Power, but Andrew Jackson opposed the absolute power. Yet he didn't want to be known as a tyrant. Yet, and this comes from the fact Andrew Jackson was captured. A British officer whose boots were muddied ordered him to clean. He was only a boy, and ordered him to clean his boots. And he was beaten badly and cut by a sword, and yeah. So his motivation against the British and revolution came from that beating. But the American campaign in the decades that follow, there weren't really much to talk about Andrew Jackson. Though he opposed tyranny, there were times he was considered a tyrant. He was very controversial, but he retired the national debt, killed the Bank of the United States, vastly expanded the power of the presidents. So he's a very conflicted man. And that happens, doesn't it? I think that's a very good example of a conflicted character. The story of a man who hated tyrants, but become one because he was surrounded by tyrants. He was always under pressure to increase the power of the presidency, expand the office of the presidency, to expand the economy, to expand the nation, to tame the wilderness, and he took shortcuts, basically. Instead of bringing peace over time with the natives, because there was the on again, off again friendship, the on again, off again wars, it just never ending problems. So they took shortcuts. This is a fall from grace story, but he's a complex character, and he has a complex backstory about his beating, and his motivations become clear over time. That his weaknesses, that he could not stand up to. He could stand up to a British officer and yell at him, or up in 1817, but as president, he couldn't stand up for his fellow revolutionaries and say, "No, I won't become the tyrant." Yet he stopped the visiting of he stopped the mistreatment of captured British officers. So there's that conflict somewhere between that and his own presidency. But as a senator, at least he tried to, protect the people of Tennessee from, tax. This is the thing. You had a revolution over taxation, but when you got into power, oh, geez, we actually don't What do you mean we don't have enough money in the treasury? What? The tax revenue, the British were right. There isn't enough tax revenue. that's the irony. That's the irony of the Civil War. That they realised that even with the British taxes, there wasn't enough money in the treasury because the cost of the cost of all these government programs. I forget what the government was and was not paying for. I mean, mostly, I suppose it was the military and education, and they wanted to expand education. But Andrew Jackson, like many founders, put Bibles in schools, yet that was unconstitutional and they didn't care. So all of them struggle with their beliefs. Now, if you struggle with character flaws, look at character building. Get a RPG and just look at character building. Just here. I should do a video on strengths and weaknesses. Should make a note of that now. If you have any questions, please comment, put them in the links below. Thank you for listening. I think sometimes people don't always notice that a spelling error or inappropriate words in dialogue are actually character flaws. There are many other strengths and weaknesses that people don't always pick up on. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please support the channel, either by donation, Patreon, buying my books, or merch. All my links are found in the link tree. Please and thank you. I shall see you in the next video.